Okay, so hopefully everybody's got power and water back and all that stuff and no damage. Any questions? Cool. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about some different stuff with CloudFormation things and all that, some kind of important parts with this. So what I'm going to do, let's see. So let's start with this one here, and let me just go. Where is that? I think it's on here. Yeah, it's on the desktop. Claims it's on the desktop. Wait, what? What am I missing here? Ah, okay, there it is. All right. So the first thing I want to look at is this idea of mappings in that. So we'll call this. What am I going to call it? Sorry. Mapping and Ubuntu web. Actually, let's get rid of this other like so. Okay, so this idea of mappings is kind of interesting. There are basically what they allow us to do is within this file we can create basically create a dictionary, a hash map, if you will, an associative array that basically allows us to kind of meaningfully look up information. So since just like all of our other resources and properties and stuff, the first thing is we need to give it a name. Okay, so in this case, what I want is a map that's going to map from the particular region that we're in to the appropriate AMI. Okay, so again, just to kind of remind you, so if I'm over here and I go to so if I go to launch an instance. Right, so let's take, for instance, the Amazon Linux AMI. Right, so notice here's the ID. Notice it ends in 834. If I happen to switch over to Ohio, the AMI is different. Okay, basically, so for each one of the regions, we're essentially dealing with a completely different AMI. Okay, so what I can do. In this case, I'm going to use Ubuntu. So let's come down here. So I'll create a mapping, and I'll say, okay, so we have the US East 1, and that will be, and then I'll just give it a particular key value that I'm just going to call Amy, and so that's going to be, let's see, let me switch back over to here. Right, so there's the Ubuntu server that we want for that. So let me go ahead and just paste that in. Right, in the case of US East 2, we'll have a different AMI. like so. And, for each of these, I could have additional keys and values and so forth per the region and all of that, right? But basically, and certainly if I wanted this to be complete, I would go through all of the different regions and basically look up the appropriate AMIs and so forth. I'm not going to do that. This is sufficiently complicated for what we're doing here. Okay, now. Basically, what we need to change is down here in resources. Okay, so here where we're creating our EC2 instance, right? Notice we've hard-coded in this case, the AMI for US East 2, basically the Ohio region. Okay, so we don't want to do that anymore. Instead, we need to use a function, right? I think I have the list for, yeah. Right, so here I actually have here I have the reference for FindInMap, if you were really interested in basically how to use this and so forth. And you can see basically here's an example of that, right? So here, for instance, they're showing a region map where they also then have additional keys for 32-bit versus 64-bit, and the appropriate AMIs and so forth. Okay, so we're essentially going to do the same thing. So what we're going to say is, okay, we're going to use the FindInMap function, okay, and then we basically take a list of items. Okay, the first thing is basically the name of the map that we're doing the lookup in. So in this case, it is this here, the Region 2 AMI map. Then we basically need the value that we're going to use to index into this particular map, right? So the value basically is, well, really what we want is the region that we are in fact using. Okay, so it turns out that we can use ref and we can use this thing here, AWS : region, which will automatically, if you will, expand out to whatever region we happen to have selected. So, for instance, if I happen to have Ohio selected here, that will be US East 2. If I happen to have North Virginia selected here, that would be US East 1, etc. Okay, so it will automatically take care of that. And then basically the key field, right? So essentially we only have this one here, AMI, and so that will give us the appropriate value for that. All right. Any questions on that much?
Between the US East 1 and Ohio and US East 2 and Virginia, you found it in the website?
Yeah, right. So figuring out basically which one is which and all that. It doesn't show it here. I'm trying to remember where it actually. There's a couple of other places that may show it. You can also actually find some of these in some of the samples and all that for the region names, right? So let's see, AWS regions, right? It showed a nice table. Now there we go. Right. So here's the various here's your various regions and basically the symbolic name versus the location name, if you will. Okay. All right. I'm also going to add in another output just to kind of just to be able to show some of these things. So let's see. So one is, let me go ahead and add in the region itself. Okay, and so I'll just use ref region. Okay. And also, so you'll recall here we are using we're basically getting the public IP, which is a raw IP address. If you wanted the public DNS to be displayed, we could actually add that in as well. So that looks like this public DNS URL. Again, I can give it whatever name I want. And so again, I'll use a sub and basically dollar something. So we want this much public DNS name. Okay, and if I wanted it to be an actual URL that I could click on, I could actually do that as well. Okay, so we print out some additional information for all of that. Also, one thing I should come back to. So at the end of, I think it was the last class, we had that kind of issue with it not quite not accepting the IP, the YAML file itself. Basically, what it came down to is, and you'll see I sort of marked up the video as well. I had this, and it actually should be that. Okay. So, yeah, you got to be careful about case. All right, so there's our there's a fairly simple level with mappings and all. Let's take a look at playing around with this. So if I go over to CloudFormation, and let's say I'm in Ohio, I'm going to select Ohio because I noticed last night all of a sudden AWS has lost its mind with my North Virginia region. So anyways. All right. Documents. So selected that, and let's go to next. Right. Call it whatever. Make sure I have my key there, the SSH location, that's fine, and we'll click next. Click next on this. Go ahead and create. While that's doing that, let me go ahead and okay, so yes, it's created. Let's check the outputs, right? So there's the IP-based URL. Notice it did in fact pick up our appropriate region. Here's the public DNS. So we go ahead and click that, and you'll see that yes, we do in fact still see the appropriate message, and we should be able to actually log into that also. Load that. Let's see, we'll grab this thing here. Yep. Right, and I'm logged in. Just to give you an idea of sort of another Another use of this, and I'll kind of see these things. You know, once you kind of see some of the basic ones, it's actually really helpful to kind of look at some of these sample templates, right? So, for instance, if we go to LampStack, the sample LampStack template here, and we'll go ahead and view that in Designer. All right, so that's loaded up. Let me switch it over to YAML because it's way easier to read. So again, so they have a number of parameters listed here as we scroll down, right? So then we get into, right, those are still parameters, SSA, here we are, mappings. Right, so AWS instance type 2 architecture, right? So they basically have, okay, so if it's a T1 micro, it's a PV64 versus an HVM64, etc. Right? So you see they've mapped out all of those. There are quite a few, right? Instance type 2 NAT architecture, right? So NAT variant, etc. All the way down through here. Right. Then they get into the individual region architectures, right? So US East, right? If we're dealing with PV64, it's this AMI. If it's HVM64, it's that AMI, etc. Right. So this is a fairly comprehensive mapping setup, right? And then you can sort of see too that they do various. If we scroll, where's the image all the way? Come on. Configure. Right, so here's basically the sort of nested mapping that they're right. So they look up the AWS region architecture to AMI, right? Then they're doing another one of region type 2 architecture based on the instance type, etc. So it's kind of mapping in and then mapping to generate the appropriate AMI for that. So you can get fairly complicated with this. Okay. All right. Now, the other thing I kind of glossed over here, and now is a good time and now we want to talk about it. So you'll notice that if you take a look at this this particular template here, it's actually, in fact, let's do this. Can I select this whole thing? I can. Great. All right. So notice in the resources section where they're defining their EC2 instance. Okay, so here they're actually making use of this section referred to as metadata, and they have kind of a different way of setting up everything. So with CloudFormation, there's a set of basically Python programs that are known as the CloudFormation Helper scripts. What they allow us to do, they allow us to kind of use this this modified or additional syntax for configuring our instance. Additionally, some of the scripts are actually set up so that so I think I sort of briefly pointed this out when we have. Right. Notice there's the update stack option. The only way that you can actually use update stack and have it really actually update the stack is if you're making use of the CloudFormation Helper scripts. Okay. And basically, what happens? Well, I'll sort of talk about it in a minute. So some of the things you can see here, notice, basically the way of specifying packages and files and commands to run is actually a little bit different. One of the things is that that the user data section that we're relying on to set up all of our software and so forth, that actually only ever gets run once. So if we only rely on user data, update's not going to possibly work. Okay. However, notice that here we have a section for packages, right? And so we can say, oh, okay, so which package manager are we using? This is the Amazon Linux, so we're using Yum. And then basically they're listing out the particular packages that that they want installed. You can actually also further specify where you want those things downloaded from. That's what the square brackets are for. But if you're downloading them from the general repository for that particular Linux, you can just leave it as this, right? So we're saying, okay, go ahead and install MySQL, MySQL Server, the libs, HTTPD, etc. Then we have this cool file section, right? So files basically gives you the opportunity to list out the exact file that you want, full path. Notice it goes right from the root, from /, right? So here they're saying, okay, we're going to create a file called index.php. Its contents are this, so HTML head, blah blah blah, right, and so on down the line. There's the entire file. Okay, all the way to there. You can also specify the mode. Now, the mode here uses unfortunately the octal version. So basically, here we're saying, okay, this is user readable and writable. Notice we're saying that it is owned. The owner is the Apache user. The group that it is in is Apache. Then there is this setup MySQL file. Right, and basically, if you kind of squint, if you've seen SQL before, you can see. Oh yeah, we're creating a database. What's the name of the database? Oh, there it is. It's the DB name parameter that we're going to specify. Right, we're doing some stuff on permissions for the DB name and the DB user that we create, and all of those. Again, we see the modes created there. The HUP configuration basically works with the update mechanism. So the idea here is that we can have this set up so that it will kind of check repeatedly to see, hey, is it the case that we have an update happen? If it is, then we're going to we'll actually do the appropriate update. Similarly for the auto reloader and so forth. Services, right? So you'll recall previously when we wrote ours. In fact, let me open up that one. Where's this one? Right. So here in our user data, we explicitly under the Amazon Linux, we had to start up the HTTPD service. Okay. In terms of the In terms of the helper scripts, basically under services, we can list essentially the particular services that we want run. So we want MySQL running, we want the web server running, and we want the CFN H update daemon also running. Right. Then we have configure commands are basically, right, so you can see, so we have a name for the command, and then we can see the particular command that's going to run. So MySQL administrate, right, do this, so root password, and set that for the, set that to the DB root password that we've set, right, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it's a different way of basically setting up these things. Additionally, it requires some user data, right? So here's actually kind of what they did there, right? So basically, this first part is essentially ensuring that we have the latest version of those tools. Okay, then you'll see there is the cfn-init script. So again, if I go back over, do I have a link to this? Let's see. Maybe not. Right. So here's the CloudFormation Helper scripts reference. Right here are the 4 scripts that basically we have. cfn-init is basically the one that kind of kicks it all off, and you can see sort of all of the various options that you can set and so forth. And they show various examples of this both in JSON as well as in YAML. Okay, so let's actually take a look at converting one of our previous systems over. Now, a couple of things about this, right? So what I'm going to show, I'll show this with the Amazon Linux. It is theoretically possible with Ubuntu. It takes some additional bootstrapping. I'll maybe actually provide some sort of links so you can kind of see, because there seems to be some debate about the levels of what the user data needs to be and all that. So anyways, let's kind of put together a somewhat simple version of these things. Okay, so let me grab there it is, the simple Amazon Linux one, copy and paste that, and we'll do a rename on that. Okay. There we go. So I'll call it CFN Simple Amazon Linux Web YAML. All right, let me go ahead and open up that. So once again, I'll continue on using our mappings from the previous one. Let me go ahead and just grab those. Well, I'll grab that section. Although since we are going to be using Amazon Linux, I'll have to change the actual AMIs themselves. Okay, and again, just the names here. You can call it whatever you want. So maybe region map. That's fine too. Okay, let's look up the AMI numbers, right? So this is Ohio. Let me go ahead and launch an instance, and I'll grab this one. Oops. And then we should be able to come over to here. Okay, so there's my AMIs themselves. All right. So for our instance, basically, let's jam in the metadata. Okay. There it is. Oh, wait. CloudFormation : init. Okay. So the configuration. Right, so basically the packages that we want. Okay, we're going to use yum. Of course, if we were using Ubuntu, this would be apt, and httpd : and the brackets. Okay, so that will ensure that that gets installed for us. Okay, let's keep it simple. We'll sort of start off keeping it kind of simple. So let's just actually, in this case, let me do this. I'm going to go back. Let's say there's config. Packages is there, yeah. Packages is on column 11, and now I'm on column. Okay, good. So there's so basically we will install HTTPD. We will ensure that it is running. So right now we're not actually modifying or creating our own index page just yet. Okay. Now down here for the for creating for specifying the image ID, right? Just like before, we're going to do a FindInMap. We're going to use the region map. and refer to AWS region, and again, AMI. Just like that. All right, our user data section. Okay, so our user data section basically is going to be modified. First of all, as we saw, so we're not going to actually specify the contents of the file here. But we'll do that. We'll do that in the file section. Also, I don't have to install HTTPD here again because that's handled by this section here. However, there is basically a yum that I do want to do. So yum update tac y AWS CFN bootstrap. Okay, so make sure we're running the latest version of that. All right, we also don't need our service start again because that happens in our services section. But what we do need to do is we are going to need to run the cfn-init script. So AWS bin cfn-init. Okay. So the name of the stack basically is going to be AWS : stack name. So this will extract the name of the stack that we've provided in the form so that it knows here which stack we're referring to. Then the resource that we're interested in, right? So namely it's whatever this is here, our EC2. So since it's EC2 instance, that's what we will call that there. And then the region in which we are doing this, and so that will be good old AWS : region. Okay, like so. Right. Some notes about this stuff. Let's see if I go back over to here. Right. Technically speaking, the sub that is being used here is not needed at all. Okay, so what sub basically says is in a case, well, like this, where I have references to particular things that I want expanded to their proper value, then we would use sub for substituting those possible values in there. However, here, notice I'm not actually in this substituting anything, so technically I could just take that sub out altogether and just leave it like so. Back to CFN. Okay. So that does that, etc. All right. E basically for erroring. So if one of these things fails, then we stop. X for basically kind of printing out to give us additional information as it's generating all of this stuff. All right, so there we have kind of a little base template. Let's see what that gives us. There's CFN. Okay. And create. And let's see what happens. Weird, I've lost my... Interesting. That is very weird. I've lost my. Okay. Let's see. West Virginia, Ohio. All right, here is this one, and I should be able to grab that. Yes, because again, missed the E. Okay. So there's the test page. So let's see if we can add in our custom HTML file. All right, so someplace in here, let's do it there. Files. Okay, so we want var www html index.html. Right. Notice we do need to specify again the absolute path to the file from the root directory. Okay. So my content basically is just going to be as follows. So we'll have HTML, and of course I'll then have a closing HTML. I'll put in a body tag, and again, so I do want to make sure I have a closing body tag. Okay, so there's the contents of the file. Then, let's see, so. User readable and writable, and world and group readable. All right, let's see.
What is mod for?
Sorry?
Mod.
Mode? Right. So in so when changing basically the file mode, right, using chmod, you can actually specify it a couple of different. I don't think I can actually use the symbolic way here. It seems that all the examples I've seen basically say you have to use the you have to use the octal version. Basically, the way it works is let's see if I can kind of write something here.
For mod or notebook is incorrect because it seems to be it should be for me like under the file name.
Yes, we'll get there. You're right, but I want to show something. All right. So file modes and all of those things. Basically, the way that it works is. Let's see. No markers. Okay, let's look up. Yeah, Linux. See if they'll undoubtedly show it in one of these. I basically want it on the screen, which is kind of why. No, that doesn't help. There we are. Okay, so here's roughly how that stuff works in terms of the numbers. Okay, so each one of the operations basically has a numeric value, right? So 4 basically means read, 2 means write, and 1 means execute, right? So 4 plus 2 is 6, right? Then we have 4 by itself, which, as we saw, is reading, right, and so forth. So you can see. So here, this is for the user. This is for the group, and that is for world or others. Okay. So that's basically that stuff in a nutshell. All right, let me go over here. Let's try to use this. All right, nope. Yes, create stack, fine. Name it whatever, I don't really care. I don't know why I'm missing. All of a sudden I'm missing the rest of the. Let me try this. What happens if I log back in? Okay, suddenly it's a different kind of view. Nope. All right. Okay. Okay, so that looks like it created. Let's go back to here. Nothing. So now what? Now, I happen to know there is an error in there, and I know where it is, but I kind of wanted to show you how you go about dealing with this kind of thing, right? So the first thing you can do is I can go to the instance, and I may be able to actually check the system logs. Let's see. So should be able to check these system logs. Is it just not? Yeah, that's what. Okay, let me do this a minute. Display settings. Strange. Okay, it's still recording. There it is. Get system log. Okay, so there's. Why is this so big? Try that. Okay, so we can try to dig through all of this to figure out, all right, where the heck is this thing going wrong? Let's see, I'll kind of scroll down to the bottom here. Let's see, packages for update. So there we see something, CloudInNit, blah, blah, blah. Another app is currently holding the lock, okay. And again, not really seeing too much here. Okay, so let's see what else. CloudInNit, yep, that's updated. Various other things. Okay, so in that case, let's take this down. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is I want to actually set this back up so that I can log into so that I can actually log into the instance to see what exactly is going on. Right. So you'll recall we had this whole thing. Again, let me make this. No. All right, so we basically already have this kind of code written for us. Recall that that basically we provided this. Okay. And then of course we need to add the appropriate parameter for that, right? So again, let me go back over to mapping. Actually, I'll add this entire parameter section because I'm going to need to specify the key value as well. So there's our parameter section, just like for the other ones, that allows us to select a key pair as well as constrain the IP range for logging in with SSH. Of course, we do need to remember. Let's see, where is it? It is key name. So we can put this wherever. Okay, so now we should be able to log into the server that we start up. Okay, let's give it a shot. I don't really care about the name. I'll select my key. Yes, we have our nice default there. Now they're appearing here. I think I had zoomed in too much. I think that must have been what it was. Create faster. Cool. All right, outputs. There's that. All right, great. Yeah, I'll just use that one. Grab that. Right. So again, this should likely die a horrible death. Yes. Okay, let's fire up Putty. So yeah, I'll do this one. Paste in that. Okay, so let's take a look. ls tac-l /var www html. Okay, so index.html is in fact there. It's of size 147, so that looks promising. We can actually take a look at the file. Oop, no. There it is. Right, so there's the file. Yeah, that file looks fine and all of that. Let's see if the server is running. Right, and so notice there's nothing listening on our port 80. Basically, it would be under local address. Okay, so we don't seem to have the server running. Can we actually start it? Oop, yes, right. Okay. So that does in fact start that. And sure enough, that gives us that. So that's great. So, all right, the file seems to be there. What exactly is happening? Right, so again, we can do things like var, check the logs. Okay. So if I come to the logs, basically I see a couple of things, right? So notice there's CloudInit logs, and really importantly is this one here, cfn-init.log, right? So let's take a look at that. Okay, so right off the bat, Error. Okay. Error encountered during build of config file, file specified with non-absolute path group. Okay. Incidentally, this probably took me about 20 minutes last night of screwing around with because I made this mistake last night, which is kind of why I wanted to show it. Anyways, basically, if you look at my indentation level, so this is, you might not be able to make it out, but this is at column 13. 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 Technically, since they're actually, they should be indented to here where content is, which is column 15. Like so. Okay. Because these are all properties of that particular file. Right? So we can do that. The other thing that I also point out, you can sort of get even more information from cfn-init by running it with this flag, basically. And this is very typical of most Linux commands. The TAC-V flag stands for verbose. Basically, it spits out way more information as it's going through its process. That's really helpful when you're actually trying to debug the thing to see what's going on and all of that. In fact, let me just I'll go back to this a minute. Let me leave this back out here, just so we can see. All right, so let me go ahead and exit that. And I'll come back over to here. Yeah, I don't need that. And we'll tear this down. Just love throwing away servers. All right. Again, don't care the name. Yes.
Could you use the update feature if you didn't want to just keep rebuilding servers each time?
I could if I actually started the update service. I haven't in this. Right? So if you take a look, so if you compare this kind of to the other one where it includes the configuration files and all that, then yeah, I could, but since I haven't, I'm left with this right now. Creation complete, cool. Let's see what this gives us. Right, yeah, still nothing. Okay. But again, taking a quick look. All right. var log. Okay. And again, so understanding that, in Linux generally you have the var log directory that contains these various kinds of logs is generally a good thing to be aware of, right? So notice there's the HTTPD log and so forth. So it's different things that you can sort of check for all kinds of stuff. Let me go back. Okay, so let's take a look at less and var log cfn-init.log. Okay. And so we see, okay, so it's running config sets default, running config. Okay, there's the installing update HTTP right there. Yes, that's installed. No group specified. Blah 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 blah. Okay, writing content to var html. Right, and then again we kind of see this error about during build of. Okay. So again, being aware of these particular logs is and being able to go and take a look at those is an important skill to have. All right, let me go ahead and fix this error, namely that. Okay. So now exit, tear this down. Oh wait, I select. Sorry. Delete. Really? Still? What? Error should be fixed by now. Yes, yes. All right, let's try puttying it. Oop, no HTTP. All right. Oh, yeah, right. We are listening on 80. What's the problem? Oh. Sometimes there's a delay in terms of, yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. All right. So that gives you kind of a introduction to the CloudFormation Helper scripts. As I said, they're a little bit of a bear to kind of get set up on your own and all of that. But certainly they do have certain benefits, and I'll actually post some links to some of that as well. Let me, just got a little bit of time. Okay, let me show you one other kind of quick thing. Let's see, this. So, the Amazon console, the AWS console is fairly handy. It's we basically have this this nice kind of graphical view for creating all of this and everything. But sometimes you want kind of a more programmatic view of that. For instance, and so what AWS has is something called the AWS CLI. So the AWS CLI, and your book actually talks about this in, oops, sorry, what chapter? There's really two chapters you want to look. You want to look at chapter 2, which basically is getting started. So this would be in the AWS administration, the definitive guide book. So chapter 2 talks about getting started with the IAM console. Okay, so what IAM is. Basically, this allows you to create various users for your account. Okay, so by default, what happens is when you first create your account, you have essentially one user, your main user, or what's called the root user. Obviously, the root user has access to everything. You're generally, just like with using, for instance, Linux or even proper use under Windows, you generally don't want the account that you're using all the time to be the root account. Okay. Instead, typically you'll create a separate user account, grant them the appropriate rights and so forth, and go on from there. So in my case, I have actually a couple of different users created. I have one called Phil. That's the one that I mainly use for things. I actually just created another one for use from the CLI. Okay, so you end up downloading this and so forth, and then you can run this. I'll just kind of show you. So here in downloads, I happen to have a copy of the mapping Ubuntu UML web YAML template. Okay. So I can actually, so once you've installed the CLI, for instance, you can run commands like this. I can say AWS and help. And so notice this, oh, okay, so it's the command line interface, unified tool, blah, 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 blah. Here's the different, here's some options and so forth. And basically, everything you can do through the web console, you can actually do through the CLI. And sometimes there's actually a few things that that you can do through the CLI that you're not able to do through that. Okay, and so they kind of talk, right, so here's available services. Notice ACM, API gateway, budgets, CloudFormation, CloudFront, etc. Right, pretty much every one of the services that that are available again through through AWS, you can actually control directly from the console. Okay, so for instance, I can say AWS CloudFormation and Help. And this will basically tell me everything I never wanted to know about the CloudFormation commands, right? So here's all of these things. Here's the available commands within there, right? Cancel update stack, create stack, delete stack, blah, 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 right? Deploy, describes, right? Etc., etc. And then I can go further. So I could say, okay, tell me about the create stack command. You can also Google this, and there's referenced web pages basically on AWS's site as well, if you prefer to view it that way. But again, you kind of get this idea. So what I just wanted to show you is create. Where did I put it now? Here's where I put it. So here's the command. Do this. Okay. So AWS CloudFormation create dash stack. Here I have the region selected. When you first install AWS CLI, you're going to run actually a configuration. That's, I think it's yeah, it's still in so that's in chapter 2. You run AWS configure. It's going to do a couple of things. Okay. So basically, what happens when you run configure? It's going to ask you for two different keys, okay? It is a AWS access key ID and an AWS secret access key, okay? Where do you get these? Well, basically, for the user, when you create your IAM user, and you can create an IAM user that can only be used by, for instance, the CLI, and you download a little CSV file that is essentially the credential. So it has those two values. You can open it up. Under Windows, if you have Excel installed, that will open it up. You can just copy and paste those values in. And you also specify your default region. So I have my default region actually set for US East 1, but as I said, US East 1 is kind of giving me a problem, so I'm explicitly saying I want to use the US East 2 region right now. Okay. Then the stack name, right? So basically that little thing that we would normally type in to say here's the name of our stack, here's how you specify it from the command line. Okay. Then you can specify the body of your template. You basically are giving it a URL to that particular file. Since it's local, I'm just doing file : / right? It's in this same directory, so there's the name of the file. Specifying parameters is a pain in the butt, but here's how you do it, right? So you use the tac parameters flag. Then you basically, for each parameter, have two things. So notice parameter key, and so in this case it's right. So since I'm dealing with this one, I have the two keys, right? So I have key name, and then I have SSH location. Right? So here is, the key is key name, the parameter value is, I'm using my Dropbox key, right? Then I have parameter key, SSH location, parameter value, basically the CIDR net, the CIDR subnet for USF. Okay? So, assuming you have all of that right, and there it is. It's actually launching the stack. Don't believe me? That's fine. Come over to here. If I go to, okay, so that's East 2. So let's go over to here. There it is. It's starting up. Let's see where it's at. There, the creation is complete. All right, let's just check out the page. Probably still has not finished. Yep. There it is. Okay. And so I can either kill it from here. I could actually run the appropriate command to kill it from the command line. I'll actually do it here because I don't know the command offhand. And so on. So all the stuff that we can do directly from the web part, you can actually use from the command line as well, which means you can kind of build up scripts that make use of those commands for kind of building up further things and so forth. So you can totally script all of your stuff. Questions, issues, etc. See you next time.